Okay, it's Ron. Good morning, y'all. It's Sunday morning already. Uh, we had a beautiful discussion yesterday about our week, primarily speaking on the convention that we saw, how different it was, how unique it was, how exciting and all the energy involved in it, and the energy that is felt throughout the land because of it. And so we discussed that and in some detail, and hopefully we'll get back into that. I did not think that thinking about that name, and I think it was Nick that said it carried masculine and feminine energy. And I thought that was very interesting and might, if you guys have given that some more thought, explore that a little bit more a bit later. God, I had something else. Uh, I had the opportunity on last evening to listen to some of the speeches because I had not heard them before. And as Barb said yesterday, I thought it was very unique and uh, it speaks volumes to hear most of the speakers talk about their families and their upbringings. And if they didn't mention mom, they mentioned a grandparent or something that happened in their childhood that influenced them and what made them, these events being catalysts to help them become the people that they are today. I thought that was beautifully said. I thought so far the speakers that I've heard did a magnificent job. Yes, sir, Pastor.
I was just speaking.
Okay, okay, sorry. Uh, so, but before we get into that, let's see if we have any questions. Anybody? And then I have a question if nobody else has one.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, family. This is Evelyn. After we got off the phone, I thought about the lotus flower and how it is planted and how it lives in the mud. And I know that the mud, the darkness, represent melanin. How does that line up with what we're talking about or what we talk about when we all meeting? Doesn't the lotus flower represent the crown? And I was just wondering, how does that line up with what we are doing now and who we are? That's my question.
Okay, good question. Thank you. Class, anyone? No one?
That's a neat kind of question.
Yeah. I admit I was more uh looking at that thing about the energy kind of intrigued me and got me to thinking about that part of it. I did not, because I did wonder, a little bit more about the lotus plant, but I did not pursue that. I kind of lost track of
I
time.
did.
Okay. You want to help us out then, Pastor? Please, sir.
The lotus flower is considered one of the most sacred flowers on earth. It appears in Buddhism, Hinduism. Because of its sacredness, it appears in the worship in Hinduism and Buddhism, but also the lotus flower can be found next to the pharaohs and priests in Egypt or in Kemet. So from the beginning of spirituality, the lotus flower has always been considered sacred. And I don't think for a moment that when Nick was talking about the Kamala meaning, one of the meanings of it is lotus, I don't think for a moment that she was named haphazardly, especially when we consider the reality that that Kamala is actually in both ways, in two ways. African because of her Jamaican dad in terms of the enslavement of us in this part of the world, but also a descendant of the Cushites. So within her, in terms of the energy, is the energy of the Cushites as well as the energy of the those of us who were enslaved. So what we are working with here is someone who has embedded in them an energy source that they probably, I do believe, just not tapping into or just not realizing that they are different, but not before this period in her life. I don't think she sees it as I'm explaining it, but it does not minimize the reality. Unless there are questions, of course.
Pastor, you locked up on me. I don't know if say that last part one more time for me, please.
About the Cushites.
About
We
the,
lost-
about the
we lost-
energy.
Yeah,
The energy, okay. The energy of the Cushites and the energy of those of us who are enslaved, both of those are in her DNA. And I do believe that is a major source of her power and authority, her insight as she moves forward. Something that I'm sure that she doesn't realize as I'm describing it, but nonetheless, it is there, and it has the power to manifest itself with her desires for humanity.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
This is Evelyn again. Doesn't mud have all the elements in the universe? And
So again,
I said, doesn't mud have melanin and all the elements of the universe in it? And well, I don't know how I want to ask my question. I'll put that one on the back burner. But okay, I heard you what you said. So
I'll deal with the mud if you
I
want.
think I want. Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
First of all, mud within itself does not have all the elements of the universe in it. However, if you delve deeply into the history of the beginnings, you will find that in Kemet, the beginning of the human in the earth is said to have come from the mud of Noon, the waters of Noon, or the mud of Noon. And if you study the history of what we were called people of the mud, long before we were called anything else. So when you talk about lotus referencing, growing in the mud, that speaks to its sanctification or the significance of its sacredness because of its the people of the African is said to is called people of the mud, meaning we came from the mud because of the darkness of our skin and in relationship to the darkness of the mud in Africa and other parts of the world. But we are called mud people. Does that help you, Ellen?
It does, but you said mud doesn't have all the elements in it.
No.
Did you say that? It does not?
It does not. There are elements in the universe that's not found in mud.
Okay. Well, I just thought that it would because that's where that's what grows, make things grow. But okay, I'll give some more thought to what you just said. Thank you.
the mud, the soil itself gives minerals to what's planted in it. That's what gives it the strength. The sun is what actually gives life to it for it to grow. If you don't have sunlight, it's very difficult to get a plant to grow, even though it starts in darkness. So it is a combination of the soil as well as the sun itself. You cannot have life without one or the other or both of them. Does that make sense?
Yes, excuse me. Yes, sir. I see now. Okay. Thanks for the clarity.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question.
A couple of additional things. Good morning, family. The lotus grows best in the mud. It's spiritually symbolic of growth from the dark womb itself, and literally the lotus grows from the womb of the earth, the darkness of that mud, and it sends out its shoots. Once it starts germinating, it sends out its shoots toward the light, and so the Buddhists kind of think it represents the potential for life, and the muddy water represents the harsh realities of what it goes through, of what life is, as we press toward our potential as enlightenment, in a sense.
I like that. Tie all of that together, please, for where we are. We're looking at up, that's her name. This speaks to the journey, I suppose, right? Where we are, the beauty of the plant, the harshness of the environment and what it has to go through, and the strength and the beauty that it has when it reaches its full potential.
Yeah,
Right.
it speaks of a beginning, a new
Yeah.
beginning in a sense, and it also speaks of what has to happen in order for that beautiful flower to become what we see when we see it having bloom. And I think the lotus also does it not close up during the night and then opens up every day during its blooming season?
Yeah,
So it doesn't
Yeah,
mean
I think
yeah,
so.
yeah, they do.
okay, so it doesn't mean that it's died or it's gone away. To me, it's conserving. It's
A lotus-
conserving its energy.
Hey, Barbara, lotus flower like roaches. They go survive regardless. They
Gotcha.
also mitigate pollution. So there are divine traits in the lotus flower that we have not talked about before. But if you actually, if you read about it, you think about it, you are reading about traits of the divine traits that we are supposed to have.
Yeah.
It talks about how the lotus can survive even on the ice. And as long as its roots are in mud or water. Notice now, it's not talking about dry soil, it's talking about mud or water. As long as its roots are there, it'll grow, regardless of the conditions.
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Barb.
That wasn't me. However, it's almost like it uses that dark, wet soil, similar to how we repurpose things that we think are not good for us, but we can repurpose energy and make it a positive asset. That's what the lotus does.
Yeah. The one thing that you said made me think of the morning glory. You've heard me talk before about morning glories. I love morning glories. I used to get up in the morning, see if I could see them blooming, opening up. And so what you're saying is, what I heard anyway, is it rejuvenates itself in the darkness, and it has a new beginning every morning, it has a new freshness, a new energy. And that is a metaphor uh, speaking to us, I think. Any thoughts
Oh,
on
Lord,
that?
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. You just talked. You just said. I mean, you just. It's like you just read poetry, and that's who we are. Poetry. We're poetry in motion, and what you guys, what the teachers, what everyone, what you're describing is poetry. I could just see that with my eye. How valuable, how beautiful we are, and how what we have to endure or what we endure is worth it. I mean, I just see it. It's just okay. I'm done, I think, for right now. Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
think, I think one of the other thing, features of it, characteristics of it, in most places, where it's seen as a spiritual representation of spirituality, um, that word lotus is also translated to mean rebirth. And I
Yeah.
think that's befitting of the name of Kamala, rebirth. Um, the rebirth of the African mindset when it comes to humanity, the birthing of the insight into what's necessary for humanity to be balanced, and what it means for us to be one in the earth, meaning that um, us existing without being labeled as different races, but as people, period. Because this idea of race accompanied slavery. Before the enslavement, race was not an issue. When Alexander went into Kemet, he did not go in there and fight because the people were black. He went there because they were greedy. And it didn't matter to him whether they were of dark complexion or whether they were Europeans. Alexander conquered everything. He didn't care what you looked like. So, but when they got the Kemet, they saw the immense riches, the wealth that had been accumulated there, and that's the thing that intrigued them the most, and that is the reason they wanted to control the area. I mean, that takes you to the question: why is it that the quote unquote founding fathers, why is it that they enslaved the Africans? Why were we brought here? For the same reason that Alexander went into Kemet. That's why we were brought. When Alexander went into Kemet, he saw the temples. He saw the pyramids. He saw the which you built your phone, please. He saw all of the all of the accomplishments there. Architecture. Would you check your phones and make sure they're muted, please? He saw all of these accomplishments, and the reason that the African was brought to America, what do you think it was? Come on, people. In the beginning, when the African was enslaved, why do you think he was enslaved? As Charles said, somebody take a stab at it. I would
That
like
was
to.
one way. That was one way that the African could be, the consciousness could be transplanted to many different soils that required its consciousness, and it's taking seemingly lots of time, but that's how that consciousness germinates in so many different parts of the world. Just like the lotus flower, when its seeds are released, it goes to other watery areas, and so that was one of the that it was a necessity. I'll put it that way. It was a necessity that African consciousness be recovered from mankind everywhere.
Yeah, I agree 100%, because the lotus flower can survive under the most harsh conditions. So did has the African. See if this makes sense to you guys. Number one, as Barb said, the spread of African, the consciousness of a cable line. The African could survive under the harshest conditions, regardless of where they were in the earth. That was not true of most other people in the earth. But the reason the African was brought to America was not only because of the color of the skin. History tells us the African was brought to America because of racism. That is a very convenient answer. It's convenient because it actually directs your attention to the skin tone as opposed to the real reason. The people who came from England and from Holland to America are glorified as pilgrims. When they came to America, they cannibalized each other. There's even a story I read about this man who killed his wife, and she became his meal. They cannibalized each other, and most of them died from this, as one writer puts it, in his diary, from the sickness of the mind. Most of them lost their mind. I think that's something to think about in regards to Donald Trump at this moment. Also, when we get to the major reason, it speaks to the inability of the European enslavers. The European enslavers were incapable of building a country. They were incapable of providing the necessities for survival in a new land. They were incapable of providing the shelter that's necessary, whether you're in the low country of South Carolina or whether you are in Virginia. They were incapable of doing that. If you follow the history from the pilgrims, you will find how ruthless they were, but more importantly, you also find that they did not begin to survive in numbers in this country until they imported Africans. And Africans are the ones who laid the foundation in terms of the material needs of a country so that they could survive. They had no architectural skills. They had no agricultural skills. They had no skills to hunt. they were filthy. They if you read you read stories about read history rather about how they took a bath maybe twice a year, and some of them wore the same clothes for years or till they deteriorated. So they had no sense of personal hygiene until they imported enslaved people from Africa, and hygiene was a part of the spirituality to the African. So all of the things that were necessary, the mitigation of disease, the farming, the idea of shelter, all these things were done by the African. If it were not for the African, there would not be any European surviving in this land today. Because what they had done, they attempted to enslave the Native Americans for the same purpose that they brought enslaved people here. But the Native Americans knew the lay of the land, and they would escape, and they could not find them actually. So when we look at the lotus flower and talk about its ability to survive in the harshness of conditions, when we hear the comparison that Barbara gave with the lotus flower survival and the energy, the consciousness of the African of Kabbalah being necessary for humanity to survive, and you couple that with the abilities of the African to construct a nation, and what they actually did was build a country. There is a writer who says, he was speaking of J.A. Rogers. J.A. Rogers was one of the most prolific historians to ever live. One of the European writers said that if you read the history written by J.A. Rogers, you would think that the European accomplished nothing. But of course, they said the same thing about Chancellor William's writings as well. So here we are at a space where we began to see that the founding fathers were not as productive, innovative, and did not have the skills that they are purported to have. I'm done.
May I add a couple of other things please, about
Of course.
It's provident that Evelyn asked the question about Lotus, because we see what's happening worldwide, and particularly today, when we woke up to news that you got bombs flying again in Gaza, Hezbollah, and they're trading bombs again, and not only that, what happens in Sudan continues. What happens in Ukraine continues. And one of the things that I just read, which I thought was intriguing, was from the Buddhist Lotus Sutra scripture. Sutra means scripture, and it talks about it teaches it explains that the fundamental equality of all people without exception, that all people are fundamentally the same, that ordinary people possess the Buddha nature. Like we say, everybody possesses the divine nature. Everybody, without exception, possesses the divine nature. They call it the Buddha nature. And that nature in Buddhism is described as limitless courage, wisdom, and compassion. And so that even though we may be facing things we can't imagine, like in Sudan, the war and the famine in Gaza, the famine and war every day, unimaginable things. It doesn't define our value and worth. And I think we heard that loud and clearly also during the convention, the DNC. So all of those things, it's like the Lotus is designed. It's designed for those situations to remind us that that's our job. That's our superpower. Our superpower is repurposing all of those negative kinds of things and repurposing them for enlightenment, for access for all people to their own divinity. And so as Kamala Harris presses on, her very name, the root of her very name, speaks to a lot of what we've been talking about in the past months and years. Thanks.
Thank you.
I have a question for you, Pastor.
Okay. Go ahead.
Oh, can you speak to the link? I know you said that you asked the question, why were we brought here in slavery to the U.S.? But, I guess my question is, how do we link that or connect that? Because all life started in Africa. The Native Americans that were here, they're basically descendants of Africans who went to East Asia and then came, so they were here. And so that's the one group currently that their religion is or their belief, their spirituality is never questioned, because the Native American seems to have always been connected with their spirituality. And so, given the foundational origin, technically weren't we already here? So maybe our enslavement and journey here was more of to unify, because the spirituality that they brought emanated from where we originated from. So is that a part of our mission too, is actually to unify that root that was here? If you can speak to that link of the Native Americans' journey and compared to ours.
Yes, as you said, the Native American, technically the African was here because the Native American descended from Africa before arriving here. First of all, let's look at the spirituality that you mentioned, as that the Native Americans did not lose. The reason they did not lose their sense of spirituality is because they were not transported to another land and kept in shackles in such a way that they did not have a choice but to be beaten into submission, as we were. And as far as the idea of the unification of humanity comes into play here, yes, as Barbara stated earlier about the consciousness of the African being necessary, my words, paraphrasing hers, being necessary for the establishment of spirituality and unicity amongst mankind. Right now, that's where we are. I mean, think about this. We talked about how the energy of the Democratic Party transposed the energy of enslavement, because the Democratic Party was a party of enslavers, and how it transformed that energy into something ultra positive for the benefit of humanity. How did that happen? Because the Africans said something. It didn't take but one word to begin the process of transforming that energy into a force that is inclusive of all of mankind. And that word was freedom. When the campaign took on a mantra of freedom, that was the transforming nature, that was the transforming energy, and that was the energy that transformed the energy of the enslaver and that Democratic Party. So everything that you mentioned in the course of raising your question, it is prevalent, is necessary, is real, and I do not for a moment lose sight of the reality of the African being brought here for the balance of the world. Think about it this way, if I may proceed a little bit longer. As I stated earlier, there were so many different things that the European was lacking in that it needed from the African and other people in the world. And right now, to this day, the enmity is not between the African and the Asian. The Europeans' enmity towards the African is greater than it is towards any other group of people on this earth. And I do believe that this is truly a melting pot. What do I mean by melting pot? I mean that all the impurities that were brought in from that European mindset of having no sense of hygiene, having no sense of the ability to read, having no sense of being one with people without war. All of that is being melted away only because there is this landmass that is inhabited by everything from the African mindset to the European mindset and everything in between. And the reason I use mindset as opposed to people is because there are people who look exactly like we look, and they are Europeans in their mind. They have a European mindset. If you think about the Donald from Florida, who was extreme support for Trump, and Tim Scott, these are Europeans. These are not people, these are not Africans. They have no sense of any spirituality in relationships to Okebelon. So all of that has to be melted away. And I do believe the Creator allowed this to happen so we would learn rather that the issue is not racism as much as the issue is the mindset of humanity. It is a foreign mindset to us. It is the mindset that has been that we have been indoctrinated with through quote unquote education in this nation. And that education in this nation created an environment of superiority of the European. And that was the greatest thing that could ever happen to us because it shocked us to a place, shocked us to move back to that space of our origin. And once we move beyond the shores of America to find ourselves, it is then that we realized that our mindset, the mindset of Okebelon, it has to become the mindset of America in order for it to become the mindset of the world. I'm done. Unless there are questions, thank you. And yes, I hope I responded to what you asked.
No, you did, definitely. I just, just thought it's ironic that, that separation was placed. for so many years in the different cultures. And we say Kamala, in some cases they say she's Asian and black, but in reality, if you look at the origin and everything else, it's just black.
Yes. Absolutely. And that's exactly what I was trying to articulate as when I was talking about her origin being her genetic makeup rather being also of the Kushites and the and the enslaved people in this part of the world. I'm done.
Okay. I have a question. This might take us slightly different direction, but kind of not. Bart mentioned the bombing and going on in Northern Africa, right? And Pastor now mentioned that earlier this morning. I guess when I first saw it, my thing was, there's no coincidence that this happening now, as the Harris Walz ticket grows in strength and popularity and the energy changes. And so something like this happens. And I'm thinking, are they trying to force her hand into being something, or into saying something against the Biden administration, or forcing her hand as soon as she takes office? This needs to take place. I was thinking about Israel saying this might be our last opportunity to do this thing and destroy these people before she takes office. And I wanted us to speak to that, put this out there, because this is pretty serious. These are lies that we don't want to see this happen this way. And anyway, I think you gather what I'm trying to say. If you wouldn't mind speaking to it.
I would actually like for someone else, anyone else who wants to speak to that, to do that before I address it, okay? Is there anyone else who would like to address that? I think it's not so much as them desiring to destroy these people before the election, as much as it is to force Kamala's hand in regards to the Palestinians. I think it's an effort by Netanyahu to force her hand via the Palestinians in this country. The Palestinians in this country are pushing her to make a decision about what she would say or do in regards to Gaza. And which tells me that they're extremely immature politically, or totally ignorant of how the government works in this country, or they are playing with fire. First of all, she cannot speak her mind about Gaza because she has to adhere to the policies of the president. She made a commitment to that leadership. Her expectations of Walz is for Walz to do whatever is necessary to help her in her presidency. And that is the same principle when it comes to her and Biden. I do not, and when I say I think they are playing with fire, if Trump were to win, there would be absolutely no restraints on Israel to do anything they want to do. I do believe that the leaders should put some pressure on her, but not to the extent that they would encourage their people not to vote for her. That would be disastrous for them. uh, uh, when you give thought to what's happening in Israel, Netanyahu does not want Kamala Harris to become president. That's a given. But a lot of these pro-Palestinians are not taken into consideration is that Netanyahu was angered by Kamala's position when he met with her one-on-one. So we did not get a readout. So it was not something that was kind to beneficial to him. So when I look at what transpired overnight, I don't know whether it was Israel who initiated, but I'm sure it probably was, because Hezbollah is also claiming that they initiated the attack in response to them having murdered the Hamas leader who was there in Lebanon. I'm done. Questions, comments? Makes sense, Ron?
Yeah, it does. And yeah, I just I thought it important to put it out there and discuss it, not only from that degree, but from every distraction that may try to ignite itself in the midst of where we are now to be disruptive as to the energy that we're seeing that's being generated by this movement.
I think in the past, Palestinians have always played with fire. Not because of who they committed themselves to in terms of their vote. This is the first time that there has been a viable group of people in this country who stands in support of the Palestinians. And I'm not talking about Palestinians themselves. I'm talking about people of European derivation as well as African. This is the first time that there has been a cross-section of people who have stood as strongly as they are standing in behalf of the Palestinians. Now, mind you, a lot of those people are not standing for the in support of the Palestinians because of Hamas. I'm sorry, because of Gaza or Israel attacked in Gaza. They're doing it because of the extent that Israel is attacking Gaza. They're doing it because of the number of deaths of women and children in Gaza. Because this is not the first time that Israel has killed thousands of people in Gaza with no response from the streets in this country. Because the news media did not talk about it. What was it, 2023, when over 2,000 people was killed in Gaza at one time by Israel, the IDF? Nobody talked about that. The rate with foreign objects of the males. The news media is not talking about that. They're talking about the horrific nature of Hamas, but they're not talking about the broomsticks that has been put into the anus of the men who are in prison in Israel. They're not talking about that. They're not talking about the torture that has taken place and is taking place at the hands of the IDF. They're not talking about that. So this whole Gaza thing yes, it's complicated, but at the same time, it's simple. The simplicity of it is this: get rid of Netanyahu. But then when you get rid of Netanyahu, who takes his place? It appears as though that the one who is in line to take his place agrees that Palestinian has a right to govern themselves. The Gaza Strip, if the news media were talking about the Gaza Strip the way that they talked about South Africa and Soweto, it would make a difference, because apartheid is alive and well in that part of the world. In Palestine, of course, it's called Israel, but apartheid is alive and well. And Soweto is the Gaza Strip. And the West Bank is becoming every single day more and more like the Gaza Strip in terms of the attacks that's being waged against it. I'm done.
Okay. Questions or comments, y'all?
If there are no questions or comments, I want to say this. Keep in mind that we are indeed talking about the spiritual nature of the earth at this point in time. We're not quoting scripture, no. However, we're talking about the nature of spirituality. The only reason, and I know I've said this before, but I want to reiterate it. The only reason that we were taught to separate history from spirituality or from religion was to keep us from talking about the reality of what has taken place in this country and in this world at the hands of Europeans. And here we are now talking about it. It doesn't mean that we hate this country or the people who perpetrate these atrocities. It doesn't mean that at all. It means that we love humanity to the extent that we forgive all of those who commit these atrocities and seek to bring them into the fold of humanity, because there is no way that you can be human and do what's being done, because a human is so inextricably tied to its sense of spirituality until it cannot commit these atrocities and sleep at night. So what am I saying? I am saying there's a difference between a human and a barbarian. That's what I'm saying. And I do lump Biden with 1,000-pound bombs there. He did that. He sent thousands, multiple thousands, probably about, I think it's about 9,000, 2,000-pound bombs there, knowing what was happening. So when we tell the truth, people get upset about that. But we cannot let that stop us from telling the truth, that these are barbarians who are running the world. White supremacy, white superiority is barbaric. What happened on January 6th is barbaric. Does that mean that all white people are barbarians? No. It means that that mindset is barbaric in nature. Has not changed from the inception of Europeans on the earth. In European history, there is no place in European history where you will find that there was respect for feminine energy or for the female. Nowhere. You will not find in European history where a female was truly embraced by all in terms of authority and power, without having to fight, without having to run the risk of being beheaded. Nowhere will you find that. So I'm not talking about individuals. I'm talking about a mindset, a cultural mindset that is very necessary if we are to be who we were created to be. Creation, when we talk about being creators, is not about things like dry cleaning was invented by an African man in the early 1800s. That was an invention. That was not a creation. Creation deals with the first thing that must be created is an image and likeness. And that's what we're talking about. Creating the mindset of Kabbalah for the benefit of all of humanity. That has not been the mindset of the earth since the invasion of Kemet. I'm done. Thank you.
Well, I'm sorry, someone else about to say something. I think that answers my next question, something that I had mentioned to you a while back. We talked. I think the education system in this country has taught us not to think, taught us not to read, not to see anything but what is shown to us. Likewise, religion has kind of polarized us to the point where we can only see the importance of ourselves. And putting those two things together has, in a very subtle way, because it looks peaceful, but it has taken away our humanity. So when you speak of that mindset, that's I guess where we are now is a very important part of getting rid of that. But how do we get back on track? Knowing what we've been praying for, what we've been doing, I think it's just important that, you know, some of the things like this that are this training regiment that has been in place for hundreds, not thousands of years, how do we get away from that? How do we push back or change that?
We're doing it. We're doing it by flooding the spiritual environment with truth. We're doing it. When our attitudes, whether we are on this line or not, when our attitudes are attitudes of love and kindness, then we are continuously reorienting the thought patterns of the earth. This is truly not about a woman, Kamala Harris, in terms of an individual woman or a Michelle Obama individual woman. It's not about that. It's about a mindset.
Mm-hmm.
It's about the energy, the feminine energy. It's about the African mother being on the throne, and that is the reason we heard so much about family and blended families. The concept of the European with blended family is a new thing to them, but we've always had blended families. The family dynamics of our family dynamics are so complicated to other people until they're still trying to figure it out. And I'll give you an example of that. Neat, who is one of my cousins, called me Uncle James because her mom, well, we grew up like sisters and brothers. Her son calls me Papa. So when you look at those family dynamics, I guarantee you that every one of you understand that, what I just said. And it goes, of course, more in depth than that, because my great granddaddy took in children who were left homeless, parentless, during during the period of Reconstruction. And he took in so many children until my grandma was talking about, they did not know who was, blood relatives in terms of biology, but all of them were sisters and brothers. That kind of dynamic. We've always had those dynamics. And I'm sure that you, as I said, are very not only familiar with it, but you've experienced it as well. Am I right?
Oh yeah. My grandparents did the same thing until the point that and you guys heard me tell this story before. When I got older, I said, well, who is this person? Who is that person? We call him uncle, we call him this. And it's one of them answers. You asked too many questions, boy, go play, go do this. And I understood it later what it meant. But yeah, so and I asked the question because I think a lot of this just needs to be out there, needs to be talked about.
Yes, most definitely. And just
I
like
have a question for Pastor. I'm sorry, I yield.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, didn't you say we are the ones, the African are the ones who started family reunions?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Think about that. That reminds me of that the Democratic convention was referred to as a reunion, a family reunion without the barbecue. Why did we have family reunion? To reunify the family, because children were so away from their parents, and that connection was always desired to be made. So we still have family reunions after slavery. And that was for the purpose of unifying the family. So when the reference to the DNC, the convention, is one of reunion, a family reunion, then that is a global family reunion, a reunification of humanity, a reunification of mankind. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. That makes a lot of sense. And I didn't know that's what they were saying about the DNC. And then I think it was Little John that said we're not going back. I think that was the statement that he made as well, too.
Well, that's a mantra that Kamala Harris introduced during her stump speeches. We are not going back, long before the convention convened.
So she put that out there in the mantra, in the macro. We're not going back. We're going forward.
Yes, she did. And that's why I say that the principles of Kabbalion, the principles of Ma'at, are in spiritually, genetically making themselves known to humanity, even though humanity don't necessarily understand it. It's like, there's nowhere in the world that I would sit down with my mom and talk about Jesus doesn't exist and talk about things the way we do. I wouldn't do that. Because it doesn't matter. What matters is that they benefit from what our desires are for humanity. Is that not true?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who gets credit. It doesn't matter the truth that we see that will be totally devastating to them. It doesn't matter that we don't talk to them about it. It really doesn't matter. What matters is that they benefit from what we are doing. Well, all of humanity benefits from what we are doing. And that is one of the reasons when I'm asked a question, I respond by saying, do you really want to know? based on the question that's asked. Now with us, I don't ask, do you really want to know? Because you know, if you ask the question, you really want to know. Because I'm gonna respond like the rest of us. We're going to respond.
That conversation would cause more chaos and hurt more than it would help.
It would, absolutely it would. So no, you don't do that. Audrey? You're muted.
I didn't have anything.
Oh, okay. I'm done, Ron.
I have one
Yes.
more thing. I have one more thing I've been pondering since you said it. And I don't know if it's a question here or not, but it just brought up something in me. You talked about Alexander going in and seeing what was valuable and taking it. And what was really valuable was not the tangible stuff, but that intangible part, that inner part, that creative part was also violated and is still being done. So I just saw something in that when you said it, because it changed a cable line into Africa. That type of violence, that type of you're not entitled to this kind of thing. And it has been damaging for thousands of years. And that restoration is underway now. I don't know. I just saw something in that when you said it.
The Greek was for things. It was not for spirituality. They did not understand the way of life of the Kemet or the Kushites. They did not understand that their way of life. So everything they did not understand, they either attempted to change it to what they wanted it to be, or they destroyed it. So this was not a process of invasion based upon the eye, seeing with the eye. This was a process of invasion based upon the eyes, the lust of the eyes, pure greed. So there are a lot of Alexanders still in existence. And one of the things that I'm looking forward to is seeing how the universe mitigates the pillage of Africa that's taking place right now.
Yeah.
I'm very, very interested in watching how that develops, because I don't see it, how it would, but I do know it is going to manifest itself. Something else that came to me while you were speaking. Oh, I know what it is. We have to be cognizant of not only how we speak, but how we think as well. We have to make a conscious effort to cease seeing with our eyes and desire only to see with our eye. Too many times we conflate earth consciousness with spirituality, and we present it as though it is one and the same thing, when it is not. It is not. And each time that a question is raised or a comment is made, and within the confines of that question or comment, we see a conflation of earth consciousness as it is now with spirituality. We have to respond to it. We have to clarify that. We have to show that they are not one and the same. And some of the times when we clarify that or make attempts to do that, there was a pushback. And I'm saying to you today that it doesn't matter to me how much you push back. I'm going to clarify the difference between earth consciousness and spirituality. If we allow the conflation to continue, then we are allowing chaos to continue. Do you understand what I'm saying? Is it clear what I'm saying? And that's not rhetorical. I want to make sure that we're on the same page. That's all.
It's clear
Okay.
to me.
See again?
It's clear.
It's clear.
It's clear.
That's what I want to want us to see. It's the necessity of doing that. And even if I'm not speaking, if I'm not even present, I do believe that the initiative, that you must take the initiative to make that clarification, especially the teacher. I'm talking to the teachers about this. We have to make sure this happens because we have been given a charge that no one on earth has ever had. And that charge is what we do 3 days a week for the benefit of humanity. And the seriousness of it could not be more obvious now. So even if you get pushed back to the point where people are upset, it does not matter. Your hurt feelings, nobody want to hurt your feelings. But if your feelings get hurt because of correction, then that means that you know you're wrong. When you are genuine, making a mistake, and it's clarified, you embrace it. How many times have you heard us say, teachers, I see it a different way? Or let me add something to that. That's clarification taking place. And there's no pushback. It's an embracing of it, or there are questions that follow it for the purpose of understanding the way you see it or someone else sees it. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah.
You can't teach.
Yes.
You can't teach if you cannot accept clarification. You can't be an effective teacher. And there are too many people out there who are choosing themselves to be a teacher or anointing themselves to teach. And that's not something that a mantle that you have received. You might know stuff, but it doesn't mean that you are the teacher of it. We have to make that clear to everyone without any arrogance whatsoever. It's just simply the way things are. I will not abdicate the responsibility that I have been given. I won't do that. And if there is no one on Zoom except one other person and me, I will do what I'm have been charged to do, and that is to teach truth as much as I can, as often as I can. And I'm sure, I trust that that's the commitment of every one of the teachers, regardless of what we have to do. We got to see the manifestation of what is already done. We are seeing it. We did not see how this change was going to manifest. But now we see it. We've been shown it, and we've been talking about it ever since its manifestation, so that others will understand it, embrace it, and follow the pathway. Questions or comments? I'm done, guys.
Yeah. Good morning, Pastor. Good morning, everyone. This is GC, George and Philly. I truly appreciate, what I'm receiving with regards to what has been said. And, my thoughts when you mentioned about Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, the 3 days that we collectively come together. But I, want to believe that it's every day, that, we have the opportunity to appreciate who we are. And so in those 3 days, we gather together, in unity, but the rest of the days are still days that we are meditating, carrying out, the desires of our heart to bring loving kindness, to community, and to humanity. And, as my thoughts, again, race, it makes me think about the importance of spirituality versus religion. And I think that there was a time that spirituality always existed. And at some point in time, religion had its way, caused maybe some confusion or some division in terms of our thoughts, our words, and our actions. But I believe we're coming back to that state of spirituality, which is a state of consciousness in terms of our profound awareness of understanding the importance of the educational initiation of the mysteries that we have the opportunity now to understand better. And so as teachers, I'll just maybe sum it up in a way I like to just say this, that an African teacher, is a parent, is a friend, is a guide, a coach, a healer, a counselor, a storyteller, an entertainer, a builder, but basically advocating for humanity. And so, as I say, it's not just the 3 days, I think it's 7 days that, again, I truly appreciate applying our spiritual journey, not only to ourselves, but to others. So I just wanted to share those thoughts, what you said. Thank you for letting me share. I'm done.
And thank you for going beyond the 3 days, because you're absolutely right. Appreciate that.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay. Maybe a good place to pause for the day and resume tomorrow evening. Okay.
Okay.
Hope you guys have a great day. Thanks again for your energy. And, look forward to tomorrow.
Thank you. See you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.